Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday. It's November 27th. This will be our chart lesson for today, and really it's just a range day. Let me back out a little more so you can see the bigger picture. It's a fairly nice size range. I mean, 56 to 82, so 22, 23, 4 points, something like that. But so that's a fairly nice range. And generally what you want to see on a range day is it go from high to low to high to low. But really we went from low to high to low in the overnight, and then we spent the rest of the day working back to the high. And so even though this is mostly an uptrend, we spent a great portion of the day just doing nothing across here. And this is where it gets a little bit iffy in here, so to speak. And so you got to be real careful trading these. There's just not a lot of trades. You see most of the trades were early, trying to get off long off the lows. And then there's a few shorts in here, but there weren't really a lot of long setups in here that I really liked. It was mostly to the short side. And we'll explain those as we get to them. But not a lot of trades today. Not a great trading day. I mean, really, when you look at from, I'd say right about 9 o'clock until 1 o'clock. I mean, we're in a really tight 66 to 70, 10-point range there. And again, we're not going clearly from high to low to high to low. We're dropping down, going sideways, jumping up, jumping down, going sideways, jumping up, going sideways, jumping up, going sideways. So it's just not a real clear, easy market. So if you had trouble reading it, it's a hard market to read. The market's really undecided here is what you're looking at. You don't have a real, even though there's an upward bias here, the bigger picture is a neutral bias with at times upward and short term up down. But anytime you're jumping up and above and below the EMA like that, you can trade this both ways. So always keep that in mind. Just be careful that when you're in a range day, when you're in the middle of the range, that's where it gets the most convoluted and the hardest to read, because you should be going from highs to lows and lows to high, and that's when a range is really simple to trade. When it doesn't do that, it becomes more difficult to trade. So keep that in mind. Let's back out. We'll talk about the trades. It won't take long today, and I'm going to move to them pretty quickly because I have another commitment this afternoon. I want to make sure I get this uploaded before, so I don't want to have to come back later and do it. But let's talk about the trade. You had to be patient today too. There really wasn't a good trade until after the regular open, and so it was almost 8:40 before we had a really good trade. But anyway, the 7 o'clock hour was during this downtrend. Not a really good setup in here, and then we bounced. Notice that you had a channel working down, you had a break, and you had two legs down, but even on this leg down, you had a break and a new leg. And so you were looking, plus you'd bounced down here, made a double bottom, so you were looking for a chance to get long. This one is so-so. I'd rather see a true reversal. We didn't get that till way up here, and I don't think you want to go long once you started going sideways there. That's just congestion. And you don't want to be going long there. If anything, you're looking for a short. So I did mark this one green because we did push through the EMA, pull back, and that's a fairly bullish bar right there. You would expect you may get two legs up. So you may take that trade. It's aggressive. I don't really like it. But you've already had to be really patient for almost an hour, almost a little more than an hour actually. So, you may take that one, but it runs up, and notice how we're getting away. We've got two legs up. You get a break, move to a new high. You're a little bit away from the EMA. This is the main thing, is this is a little range or congestion. Congestion is just a small range, and if you look at that, this is a failed break out of that. So plus it's a new high after a trend line break. So there's several reasons to like that trade right there. So I marked it. It's way away from the EMA. I marked it green. No, the better trade is, notice how you just dropped right back through, pulled back to the trend line, lower high right there, bearish bar, plenty of room back down to these lows. So I like that one. That's the first trade I really like all morning. And of course we bounce down here. This one is tempting here, but you're almost always better to wait on a new low. There's no break of this trend line yet. It is a double test. Notice that low, and you test it once, twice. So you could argue for it to be green, but I always recommend waiting on a lower high if you're coming off the high. I'm sorry, a higher low if you're coming off the high, a lower high. So if you got a failed break up at the highs, you want to wait on the lower high, which is here. And if you get a failed break or a bounce on the lows, you want to wait on a higher low, which is here. So this is the better trade. I like it. It's a nice bullish bar. Plenty of room back to the EMA. That's a good setup. And then this is more of a reversal pattern right here. Notice that we pushed through the EMA, pulled back and tested another nice bullish bar, failed second entry short. That's a true reversal type pattern. And there is a shorter term trend line I don't have on here. But you can see that right there. And it bounces right off that trend line. And so there's plenty of room back up here to these highs. I like that one. I really thought maybe we were going to catch a low this time. It didn't happen, but it's an easy scalp, and then we pull back. And, of course, we make a higher low again, though. But you got this trend line working down. So wait on a better pattern. There's a pullback here. Fairly neutral bar, though. It pushes higher, pulls back. First entry, pull back, second entry. Now you got a second entry. Long, bullish bar. You got a double test. Notice that low. You test it once. You test it twice. Nice flat support area there. You could argue it's back to this trend line depending on how you drew it. I like going long there. And if you took that trade, that's really been the best setup so far. Notice we pull back right here and give you a higher low off that same trend line, relatively close to the EMA. So I like that one too. You did have to be a little bit concerned about this one because of this up. This could have been the trend channel line, but this wasn't real clear at that point. You really don't know whether it's here. You did have a couple of touches there, but this one didn't quite get there, notice, and so there's a chance that you're going to push on up, and you ought to get a scalp out of that. But it pushes through and pulls back and tests that where you would think that line would be, so that gives you odds that we're probably going to make an equal distance move up through there. And notice how it takes on off. Looks like that's probably more like right there because you get that perfect touch there and then a perfect touch there. So, and this could be a little bit lower. It doesn't quite look equal distance now. Maybe it does. Maybe I had it right the first time. That looks pretty close right there to me. And that's what you expect when it pushes through a midline. It pulls back, it tests it, gives you a bullish bar. This, you're getting away from the EMA. It is a failed second entry short, though. You got two legs up, and it does bounce off that line like it could be a midline. So you may take that one, and it's right off that key entry point of that shorter term trend line. There's some reasons to like that one, and if you're right, you'll probably catch a move all the way up here and get some runners. And turns out it is right, but that's aggressive. So for all the reasons I just talked about, this one was tempting. First entry, second entry, but notice how you got all that support right across there, right into the EMA. We really don't have a new high yet on this break, so prices could try to go higher, push up higher again. And so I don't think you want to go short there. There's another setup right here, but you hadn't really confirmed that trend line yet. But when you get this failed second entry long here, notice that this is a double, triple top. So that's basically a new high, first entry. Really your second entry is here, but this is just a pullback to test that again, and it tests that trend line, confirms it, tests that EMA. And that's basically two measured legs down, and then it fails. So you treat that still like a failed second entry long. Even though it ticked higher there by a tick, I'd still treat that like a failed second entry long. Doesn't really matter about the signal bar, but even if you wanted to overlook that signal bar and say, hey, well, look at this big bearish one right at the same place, I wouldn't even have a problem going short one tick below that. That's probably the way I would actually enter that, is one tick below that. I'd put my sell stop right there, and it would have been a quick, easy move. You're looking for prices to probably come back to the trend line anyway as well. And there it comes, and then we bounce. You didn't get a very good signal bar down here, and you get no entries on the way back up here. You get a higher low, but it's very bearish. This one's really bullish, and notice how it gaps over that midline right there. You can see it. There's no overlap. Don't ask me why it does that. But it does. A lot of times what happens is there's not a lot of orders right in those areas for whatever reason, and I think that's why it gaps over them a lot of times. And it's generally because it's really strong too. For whatever reason, you'll see those real strong moves right around those areas, and boom, off it goes. And you would think we were headed back to the highs, but we did get a break here. Now we got a new high in place, so we could reverse right here. So look what happens. We're coming down. I don't see any shorts I like here. You do have a pullback with a big bearish bar here, but it's really close here. That's one you might consider. You could let it break lower and drop a limit order and see if it pulls back. And it would have pulled back and filled you a few ticks back in there. That's a possibility. It's not my favorite setup. I'll mark it green. We do come back here, but now we've already touched the low again. And so I'm real leery about going short right there, and you don't have a lot of room back down. But look what happens. It pushes through. You try to, this is basically a double top up here. So you got a new high, try to go higher once, twice. Big bearish bar below the trend line. We've already had a break and a new high. So we may get a measured leg down just like that one. So I like going short there. We don't end up getting that measured leg, but we get an easy scalp out of it, then it bounces. And this is what throws you off right here. You wouldn't expect this bounce. And this throws everybody off, and everybody starts thinking long again, and then next thing you know, we're going lower again. And I really don't see anything I like here getting short. Your failed second entry longs here, but everything's right here. It does look like a repeat pattern of this. So I'll give you that. And if you notice that, when it went higher here and turned back down and went past here, you could have a sell stop there if you wanted. So I'll give you that one because it does look like a repeat pattern, but most people don't notice those. You got to be really good to remember repeat patterns. You got to be really experienced at reading, but you can see how that pattern looks very similar. And then we make this next one just like right here. But here you had a big bearish bar. Here you got a bearish bar, but this is really your signal bar right here. So I don't like this one as much, but it is a first entry, and when it broke lower there, it was a second entry as well. So that's another one that you could argue for, going short below that red one. However, one second here, your safety stop has to go above the green bar at the high of the swing. So that's another one. And that's a pretty nice move. And notice we were talking about a measured move. Well, if you measure that leg and put it over here, there's your measured move. We actually went a little further. But you can see how this leg looks very similar to this leg as well. But the pattern right here where it reverses looks almost identical to this right here. And then it's running down. We get a break here, and then we just start going sideways. And you've got the break here, but you don't have a new low in place. So I would like a second entry short here, but you don't have a very good setup. Then it bounces here, nice bullish bar, but everything's still to the downside. We're really still looking for shorts. Here's a failed second entry long with a nice bearish short with a second entry short as well, but you don't have much room back here. You're probably looking at these, so that's another one. And you could really almost argue for that to be red, because if you go to the far right side of the corner, it's not looking like a range so much. You do have to be concerned about those lows right across there, but I would probably take into account the stems here since we traded down there both the last time. So if you got enough room there, notice that high, first entry, second entry. Notice that new low, first entry, second entry. So when it broke lower, that's a second entry short. So you could argue for that one. Looking at it after the fact, I wouldn't mark it, but during real time, I like that setup, and so I'll go ahead and mark that one. And then we get a little failed break higher with a big bearish bar away from the EMA. I like that one. Generally, you like the lower high, but you don't get a lower high. Or maybe you could argue that's a lower high, but that's really your signal bar. So, but it is still at this high. So that's another one you could maybe argue for if you've got enough room to get out between here and these lows. And we did push through, so there's a chance we can go lower. But I would only take that trade if I thought, and you might have moved this down by that time too, if I thought I had enough room to get out. So if you got that, that's another possibility right there. I'm only going to mark it green because it's not a great setup. Of course, we bounce, but there's not enough room to get out before here. Then we do push up and pull back and get a breakout pullback long right there. And notice that low. First entry, you make a second leg up. Second entry short, it fails. I like going long there right off the trend, right off the key entry point trend line, right off the support resistance. It's resistance previously, now it's acting as support. That's what you want to see. Right off the trend line, right off the EMA. I like going long right there. You could, again, you could almost argue for that one to be blue. So it's right there at the border. I can mark it blue and say it's real close to being green, or I can mark it green and say it's real close to being blue. So, you know, it's your choice. It's the same thing. Anyway, we start going sideways. We get a break of this trend line. And this doesn't take off like you would hope it did until you get a little failed break lower. And I love to try to find these failed break lowers. But if you really take all that across in there, it doesn't look so much like a failed break. It does. Notice we did have a lot of support right there, and then you get the big stem, but it's not a very good signal bar. And so I was just leery of it. You get a higher low here, again, very neutral bar away from the EMA. You've already got a break, now a high in place. It's too dangerous trying to go long right there, and you don't want to go short yet. Same thing here. Now you got a break and two legs up and a bearish bar way away from the EMA. Generally, you want to wait on your lower high. You don't really get one worth talking about here. And we actually push up and make another high. And then you test it once, you test it twice, big bearish bar. That's where you go short right there. You got plenty of room to get out. That takes you into the 2 o'clock hour. But that's going to wrap it up for today. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow, but this is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.